This meeting is being recorded.
There we go.
All right, so then go ahead and call the meeting to order and then just hand it over to Mari.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's hope this works. There we go. Can everybody see the agenda?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so just to kind of breeze right through this as quickly as possible, the main three things we have to discuss today are picking a company to do the paint removal and repainting, how we want to approach the historic wagons also being restored, and project budget for this. And basically, our recommendation is to, out of these three companies, which we can go through and discuss a little bit more, and Laura, of course, will jump in because she's been working with them. Out of these three companies, we have two somewhat similar budgets and one that is obviously quite a bit more. Genesis is our staff recommendation, and the reasoning behind that is their total budget is $15,947 for the exterior work. That's paint removal, repainting, and we found that their bid was very detailed. They included a lot of information on how this was going to be approached and how it was going to be done. They also gave us a bid for the wagon, which was going to be about $898 to do that in addition. And they also have a lead certified contractor. So we would be able to use them as well to replace three or four boards that need to be replaced. That would be in addition to that, the $16,845 of the painting in the wagon. We don't have bids for anybody on here for the boards because from what we can tell, nobody else has an in-house contractor. So we'd have to go outside for that. But my thoughts are a budget request of about $20,000, hoping that that would cover the paint removal and the repainting for the building and the wagon. Whatever the contractor is going to cost to replace the boards, we'll have to buy boards as well as, paying for his time. And then a little bit of cush in case something comes up. The funding source for this right now, my suggestion would be that we are open to dipping into our Middleton tourism fund balance. Now, that's not to say we might not have some money left over. We received some refunds for trade show grant money, and that's actually going to be a big chunk of this would pay for that. And there might be a chance for us to pull some from somewhere else as well. Right now, it's really too early to be able to estimate where our overall balance is going to be at the end of the year, because I'm still missing about 5 hotels from Q2, and we're anticipating a solid Q3. But we knew going into 2022, there was a chance we'd be dipping into the fund balance regardless, and that was before we found out that there was lead in the paint. But just to let you guys know, if there's a good chance that we won't actually have to request as much as we thought. And I spoke with Bill in the finance department, and he said, let's wait till October. Let's wait until Q2 is completely reported. We kind of know more about where Q3 is. And then that way I'm not requesting funds that we don't need and then would end up having to go back. And so I just wanted to let you know right now, technically, I don't have a budget for the painting, which we knew going in. But there is a possibility that we won't have to take out the entire amount from our fund balance. Now, if we went with Jade Painting, they're the ones that are $27,220. This did include replacing 3 sideboards. He included that in his bid, so he must have decided that he could do that in-house. And it does not include the wagon because we hadn't received that from him. But if we're estimating it's going to be around the same amount as Genesis, then the budget request for this would be closer to $29,220. And that's anticipating that the wagon costs $2,000, considering almost everything that he is charging is like double of what Genesis is, right? And Magna, if we went with them, they had the lowest for their bid. It was $14,781. It does say in their contract, it requires a 50% deposit. So if we went with them, I'd have to negotiate that out because the city does not prepay for services. And this does not include the replacement of boards or the wagon either. So if we added the boards in there, they might be closer maybe to the Genesis number, or very, very, very close in the end to Genesis, I think. And so basically what I need from all of you is we can open this up to discussion. People can ask questions. Laura can jump in as well. And then I just need a motion to accept one of these bids. And it would be best if we didn't say, and not to exceed X number of dollars. Because then if something does come up with extra boards or we find rot, then we have to go through this whole process again to, if I have to add $500 or $1,000 when it's limited like that. Or if you're going to say not to exceed X number of dollars, we should add probably more to the overall budget, whatever you're comfortable with. And then we'll also have to decide on whether or not we want to approach this contract before finance and city council approve it on the 16th. And we can get to that. We can get to that later. So opening it up to discussion on the 3 bids proposed. Does anybody have questions? Anything that you needed to ask or for us to follow up on if you don't feel like you were presented with enough information?
I have a question. When Bill says he doesn't want this submitted until the 3rd quarter, does that mean you wouldn't be able to do the work until the 3rd quarter? And
No.
Did
If
any
the
of the
commission
contractors give you any idea when they'd be able to perform the work?
So the way the budget works, if the commission approves a budget line, then we can proceed. What would happen is at the end of the year, whatever we are running on a deficit for, I have to go before finance and common council to approve that out of the general fund, which we were probably already going to have to do because we did not, we knew in 2022 we weren't going to make enough revenue to cover all of our expenses. We got some grants. We had a better Q2 than we thought, so it may not be as much. But no, if the commission approves this and then the city council, common council and finance approve the contract on the 16th, then this is a done deal because we can take the finances out of our general fund. Bill was just saying wait until October because that way we'll have a better idea of how much overall I have to take out. I may have to take out 15. I may have to take out 30. I have no idea where we're going to be at the end of the year.
Okay. And then when could the person, any of these perform their work this fall yet?
Laura, do you want to jump in?
Yep. So Bull, I guess I didn't get a estimate on scheduling with Jade, but with Genesis last I heard, and I mean, it's a moving target. So depending on when we can actually reach back out and say, yes, put us on your schedule. The last I heard from him was last week, and he was looking at the 3rd or 4th week in September. And I think Magna was looking at early September. But again, that was last week. So, we're just going to keep being pushed off the longer we wait to confirm this.
Kate, did you have a question too?
Yes. So thank you. This is more of just a general question, and I apologize for my ignorance here, but Mari, do you have a certain amount not to exceed where you can just make a decision without having to go through the commission and or the rest of the channels throughout the city?
I think it's something like less than 3,000.
I think it's
Okay.
3.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's 3,000 or less. I don't have to go through finance and common council.
Okay.
Or you guys technically, as long as it was already in the budget. Like I couldn't all of a sudden add, well, no, I take that back because in advertising, we have done that. But like, for instance, if we were going to buy like a $3,000 bench out front, I would probably still clear it through you guys.
Okay.
And if that was in addition to what, as long as if it wasn't in our budget. But yeah, otherwise, I believe my limit as a department head is 3,000. I can't
Okay.
spend more than that without going through all the steps.
Okay. Thank you.
No, it's a great question. It is a question I asked only a few weeks ago because I didn't know what my limit was.
Kathy, did you have another question or no?
No, it was the timing of when the work could be done was my other question.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to skip you.
Oh, I thought Laura answered
Oh,
that.
I got it. Oh, I got it. Yeah, she did. I just forgot to lower my hand.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Good.
I thought you had another one.
No.
I mean, I kind of just have more of, I think, a comment on it. And I'll be the first to admit when I heard the wagon, I'm like, oh my gosh, not again, because we already did some work on that. But it was like, even at $800 or $900, but like if it really is like a draw for people to come in and do photos and stuff like that, I guess I'd be on board with that. Part of me, like when looking at bids, I always throw out the highest bid. In this case, throw out the one that's almost $10,000 more. I mean, that's me personally, I guess. And kind of compare the other two, and it looks like they're providing, I guess similar services. I guess the question I have in terms of the city is, are we required to pick the lowest bid? Like, how does that work?
We are not, because I know like in the past, like our marketing agency and that kind of thing, when we were looking at it, I was told we weren't being held to a budget. Obviously, we will always want to be fiscally responsible, but if you find that a company is one you're more comfortable with or more impressed by, or you think they're going to do the best job, from my experience, we were able to choose that company. I mean, I don't know how people would feel if we chose the company that's 10 grand over,
Right.
but if it's not a huge difference.
Because I guess to me, it like probably just comes down to scheduling. Can they get us in? It really looks like apples to apples, like in what they're providing, like two coats. And, when I compare them, and it's like, I don't know if, do we have to approve the vendor, or can we approve the dollar amount and then allow you guys to kind of do further research? Because what happens if we approve the vendor and Genesis is like, oh, sorry, we can't get you in now until next year? What do we do?
Laura has already contacted them.
Okay.
And Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we approve this contract, we could get into September.
That's what he said last week. But like I said, I mean, it's a moving target. So like until we say, put us on your schedule, which I haven't been able to do yet,
Right.
he can't commit to that. So I'd like to think that we could get in, late September at the worst, early October. But again, until we say go, they're not gonna commit to any dates.
So, and your guys' preference is Genesis, correct?
Yes, and part of the reason for that is the in-house contractor, we don't have to go through this process again to find somebody to replace the boards. That's
Okay.
outside. Because Magna didn't have somebody who could do that for us, correct?
Correct, yes.
And so with Genesis, we could get all three of these, quote unquote projects done with one company and one contract. And once we enter that, I'll have a more of an official number. I mean, whenever you're talking about something like this, we can't say this is definitely only going to cost $15,000, because if they
Right.
start pulling boards and something else happens, obviously that could increase. But for the most part, for the scope of the job that's being described, this is probably a pretty close estimate. And again, this doesn't include what their contractor would charge for those boards. But at least we could do it under the same contract. And he could do it, and he could come in and they could organize that themselves on, this is the day you come in and do that. Rather than us trying to deal with two different companies and be project managers.
Right.
For like basically a little over an extra $1,000.
Mhm.
I don't have to be a project manager.
Well, and that's what I feel like, I guess, to my conclusion. And again, just I guess I'd open it up for a motion, but I personally, I've never used any of these companies. I've probably heard of Genesis the most just from their advertising. But if that's the one that you guys feel comfortable with, the only thing is I entertain a motion. I see Jose, you have a question, so just 1 second, but I think we have to give like a dollar amount cap. We have to do something, like whether it's like 25K or something like, I don't know what that number would look
Well,
like.
when I was, so their estimate for the paint removal and painting plus the wagon together is 16,845. This is Genesis.
Hmm.
And so my budget request, I'm thinking 20,000, or we could
Okay.
add that a little more. For because a lead certified contractor is obviously more expensive.
Right.
For that person to come in and replace whatever boards that need to be replaced. So we could make a motion for accepting whichever contract you want, and then you could say not to exceed, 20, well, if we went with either Genesis or Magna, not to exceed $25,000, then I think that would definitely cover it with room to spare. Because if they find rot, this becomes a different issue anyway.
Right. And then you got
And
siding
so,
issues.
and that's, I don't even want to talk about that if that happens. But it's also one of the reasons we wanted to do this now, because with those loose boards, we're going to get rot if we don't fix this soon.
Right. Yeah, and then they get into having to take the siding off, potentially replacing the wood underneath. So yeah,
Oh, yeah.
hopefully it doesn't happen. Go
Jose,
ahead.
what was your question?
Yeah.
Maybe you did mention this and I forgot, but so if they are getting rid of all the lead paint, are they gonna give you some sort of certification just for the future? We don't have to go through this if we want to repaint the depot?
Well, we can definitely ask how that works, but I have a feeling that we will always have to go through this because I think it's in the wood.
Yeah, they're not removing the lead paint at all. They're putting a primer over it, is what they're doing. So they'll spot prime the bare wood, and then they're going to prime the whole surface to try to contain it.
I thought their bid said that they were scraping.
Yeah, just
Right.
loose
The
paint,
loose
any
stuff.
flakes or any loose paint, but no, they're not taking it down to bare wood and then priming it and repainting it. This is not going to remove the lead paint from the building.
Okay.
I just personally have a hard time because I painted in between coming back from Chicago and working here at the Marriott. I know how much these jobs cost, and I also know the quality of work that Genesis does, and it's not top notch.
It's not.
Oh no, they market like they're the best because they've got a lot of marketing dollars, but they're really not. Yeah, 25 grand to me is a hard pill to swallow because the average cost of painting an exterior home is 2,500 square feet is about $6 grand. Now that doesn't take into account the lead paint, of course, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's a lot to me. I would have thought 15 grand would have probably been, including all the prep work and the daily cleanup and everything, 15 would make sense, but.
Well, I mean, that is their bid. Their bid is 15,947 plus 898 for the wagon. And
Yep.
then we were adding some padding in there because we have to have the boards replaced. And so I was hoping we could do this for less than 20. We were just trying to come up with a cap so that we wouldn't have to call another special meeting if something was found. And again, that number, you guys are the ones who decide what you're comfortable with on that. But if you think that Genesis isn't the right company, what did you think of Magna? I mean, again, we'd have to go through a contracting company with them. We'd have to figure that out. But if you don't think that Genesis is the right company, what about Magna? Jose, do you want to insert?
Yeah, well, is it, so if Genesis is not gonna remove the lead paint, is any of the other bids remove the lead paint, or are they all gonna just patch it up?
Yeah, they're all the same. It's just going to be a matter of scraping the loose paint. So they'll go through, they'll wash the building, then they'll come back through, and any loose paint they will knock off, and then they will prime those areas. One thing I will say about the Magna bid is the Magna bid says they're going to put 2 coats on all the siding, whereas Genesis is only putting 2 coats on your accent siding, which is the lowest portion of the depot. The rest of it, they're going to put 1 coat of primer, 1 coat of paint. So anytime you have a city employee come back there and try to touch that up, it'll look fine from across the street, but then when you walk up to the building, it's not going to look very good. So in order for touch-up to work, you have to have 2 coats of paint on there.
Okay.
The second
I'm so
coat-
glad you're here, Jim.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah,
so glad.
Otherwise, when you go to touch it up, especially with exterior paint, because the sun fades it, that second coat, which would really be your touch-up, would be your second coat, which then shows the true color. So on interior, 2 coats is needed to be able to touch up, but exterior, it's even more important.
Jose, you have your hand up?
No,
But yeah, the only way to remove the paint, they'd have to use a chemical to basically soak it off and then kind of scrape it, and nobody's going to do that.
Oh, wow. Okay, then that changes some of the conversation.
I mean, I think their bid's fine. I just, again, I don't like the fact that they're gonna one coat it. I just know that that's Genesis MO because that gets them off the job site quicker, right? They don't have to come back the next day or another 3 days to put the second coat on. Which saves them labor money, obviously. Now, it's been 13 years since I've worked alongside Genesis or seen any of their work, so maybe they're better than what they used to be, but that's just my 2 cents.
Well, 13 years, maybe totally different people working there, but
That's
the
true.
one coat versus 2 coats, how much do you think that would add to the bid?
I mean, with Genesis, it's tough to say. I would ask them, you know, what they would charge for a second coat on everything, but you know, you can get away with stuff like trim and fascia, soffit. You can get away with one coat on stuff like that usually, especially like soffit is not exposed to the elements, right? It's underneath the eaves of the building, but the siding really, I mean, to not 2 coat the siding, and they'll tell you when you ask them about it, they'll be like, oh, well, yeah, it's 2 coated. The first coat is the bonding primer that we tint to the paint color, and then the second coat is the actual one top coat of paint, which ish, right? Like kind of, but I don't know.
Oh, but to go back to answer something Jose was saying, from what I understand, as long as we aren't chipping away at it in the future, you can repaint.
Yeah.
Because we're not, like, the next time we do this, we'll probably just be painting another coat, especially as long as we don't wait 10 years.
Yep.
But if it starts falling apart like it is now, then we'll have to go through this entire process again. So
Exactly.
it's something we'll have to really pay attention to and not wait, 10 plus years to repaint the next time if we don't want to have to go through all of this. But, all right.
I feel like that circles us back around to, was it Corey's question maybe, where can we provide the approved upon dollar amount with the cushion, and then you can go back and talk to Genesis about, we need 2 coats, and then internally, as a business professional, you can make the decision between Genesis and is it Magna?
Yeah, I think absolutely. If the commission makes that motion and trusts Flora and I to make the decision based on what comes back for the budget, then we absolutely can. But you would need to provide your preference. If you do have a preference for one over the other based on what Jim was sharing, then I will start with the preference and then work backward from that, if that's what the commission chooses. But yes, I think that you can say we approve a certain dollar amount, and we're leaving it up to the staff to choose which company based on making sure that they do 2 coats and making sure that we are hitting certain criteria. We could do it that way, and then that way we don't have to meet again.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps it's just a matter of going back to Genesis saying we like your bid, but we got a one that's slightly less expensive that's doing 2 coats on all of the siding, and see what they say for that.
Jim, I thought in Genesis, they said they were doing 2 coats. Did I read that wrong?
Yeah, so it says, let me find it.
I'm gonna find them again.
Top coat.
2. The one
Oh.
expensive one, they're 2
Oh,
coating
here,
everything.
I can pull it down for you guys too.
Yeah, so on page 2 of 7, preparation and painting of the lower accented wood siding. They're gonna prime the raw surfaces, and then they're gonna top coat the surfaces with 2 coats of acrylic low sheen enamel. Whereas if you talk about the upper wood siding, they're gonna prime it, and they're gonna top coat the surfaces with 1 even coat.
Interesting that they use Zinsser Bullseye primer. I use that in my house.
Yeah, yep. So, and then it says they'll prime the raw surfaces. So basically what that means is when they're looking at the siding, if they'll see something that looks like it might be flaking a little bit, they'll scrape it. If it exposes some raw wood, they'll spot prime that little spot, all the little spots, and then they'll do 1 top coat over all of that.
Right.
Yep. So that's where you get into situations where it'll look pretty for 3 years, 5 years, and then after that, it's not gonna touch up. You need to get it fully repainted.
So if I'm hearing everything correctly, I think we would entertain a motion with a cap that would allow staff to pick between these Magna and Genesis, depending on further feedback. And then, I mean, the feedback would be the second coat with Genesis, and then the feedback with Magna would be the wagon, and kind of see what that looks like, and then just come up with a cap. Am I hearing that correctly? Or does somebody want to make a motion?
Well, I just want to point out too, though, that Jade, the expensive one, like they're priming and two coating everything.
Everything. Yep. With,
Like-
with an oil primer too, instead
Yeah.
of a water-based primer, which oil-based is definitely what you want outside. I agree with that.
I mean, they're not comparing apples to oranges when you compare Jade to the other two.
True. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
And Jade doesn't include the board replacement and wagon.
No, Jade did. Jade, let's see here, 1 second.
Jade
Siding
would be
board.
That was
at
exterior work,
29.
painting and replacing 3 siding boards. It just didn't include the wagon,
Yeah.
which I'm guessing would be 1 or 2 grand.
What they're doing is they're trying to encapsulate the lead with that primer. You know, if they were removing the paint, we'd be looking at, like, you see that Jade is asking $8 per square foot. They're gonna spot prime with oil primer, which is better, and then 2 coats of exterior paint, but they're charging $8 a square foot, which is the top of the scale for that type of an encapsulation. And it's really not a true encapsulation because they're not oil priming all the surface, they're only spot priming. But usually you're looking at like $4 to $8 per square foot. Now they know they're bidding with the city, so they're gonna go with $8 a square foot.
But they're also two coating everything.
But they are
soffit,
two coating everything, which is important, exactly.
Which with a higher quality paint, you said?
Yeah, yep.
I
Yeah,
guess
if-
the
if
question
they
was,
were- Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the question is, I was gonna ask you, Jim, with that is like, obviously, that will create a lot more longevity, would it not?
Yes,
Well,
Without a doubt.
look at it this way, you're only talking about, so Jade is 27,220, and that includes replacing 3 boards.
Yep.
It doesn't include the wagon, so let's say on a high end, it's 2,000. By the way, if they prime that wagon, I can paint it myself. So
Right.
like, we could choose to keep this like within that budget, right?
Yep.
So the overall budget for that would be right around 29,220, so let's say 30. And with Genesis, we're saying 15,947 plus the wagon, which was 898. Plus, we don't know what they're going to charge for their contractor, but let's say 2 grand, like we added for the other one for the wagon.
Yep.
And so that's going to come out at 20-ish. So it's about a 9 to 10 grand difference, but we're getting 2 coats of paint and a higher quality paint. If we went back to Genesis and said, would you do oil paint with an extra coat? I mean, I could ask them that and see if it's less than, an extra $9,000.
Can always go back to Jade and ask him to throw the wagon in too.
Mhm.
I think they're getting you on that fascia there for $1,730. It's 210 linear feet. Somebody's gonna paint that before they go to lunch that day, and they're charging you $1,730 for it. So I mean, I think it's worth asking if they can throw the wagon in. He's got a little bit of fat in that bid for sure. I don't
And
know.
they're already on site. They already have the materials, so maybe that's something they could do as
Yeah. Yep.
Not to put you on the spot, Jim, but like, you know way more about this than anybody, and do you want to make a motion on what you're thinking, or?
Yeah, I mean, I as much as I think it's expensive, I do think that the Jade bid, to Kevin's point, is definitely the one that's gonna take the best care of the building. So, I mean, I think I'd like to make a motion to cap it at $30,000 for the depot and the wagon. Which allows you to go back then to Genesis, to kind of, negotiate with these 3. And see where you can get that into place. But like you had mentioned, Mari, it's not like we have to go to the lowest bid, based upon the city. And what we want to do is make sure that we're not looking at a depot that needs to be repainted in 5 years.
Well,
Well,
exactly. If it costs, like, let's say all we're doing is touching up in 3 to 5 years, it's gonna be
Right.
another 8 or 9 grand.
Yeah.
That's the difference we're looking at right now.
Yep.
And if this lasts us twice that long,
I also like that they say that they're gonna scrape and they're gonna hand wash the building, which that's what they're supposed to be doing. I think the other one said they were gonna soft wash it, but I don't know what that means. Low pressure.
I'm so
power
glad you're
washing.
on this because I had no idea about any of this. Like,
Yeah, they should be hand washing it. And
This
that's
is-
where the price gets, that's why it gets expensive, is because that takes forever. You're there for a few days just washing the building,
I would second Jim's motion to approve up to $30,000 for the project.
Yeah, and I would say just to add on, just to see if we can get the wagon thrown in.
Yep.
Is there any discussion? Does anyone have any questions?
Jim, I didn't even know what questions to ask, so thank you.
I
very
know.
much. Again, like
I-
that's very informative.
Yeah, it just makes me, like, Jesus, maybe I should have just stuck with the painting business if I can get $30,000 bids all the time. My goodness.
It
And
just,
the depot is not a 2,500 square foot house. I could paint one of those in a week, the exterior. They're gonna take their time and take up a whole month. I mean, you can pay 30 grand, you might as well take a month,
and you're looking at somebody that I think that the depot, this will be the second or third time it's been painted since I've been
Right.
around.
Jeez, yeah. I mean, old
think it's
buildings,
second.
so, it's tough. It is tough to keep those things looking nice. And,
okay,
one
so,
coat's not gonna do it.
so if I'm understanding, Jim made a motion to cap this project at $30,000 for the depot, the wagon, and the board replacement. I'm adding that in there because that does qualify. And gives staff the leeway to choose the best option based on price and what they're going to offer. And we'll go back to Genesis and ask what would be the increase in cost for an extra coat of paint and using oil-based paint instead. And go back to Jade and ask if they would toss in the wagon. And we can go back to Magna and basically say the same thing, because I don't think, I'll double check, but I think Magna was basically offering the same thing Genesis was.
Pretty close.
Well,
Yeah,
and if I'm correctly, Jim, you're recommending to use
Jade.
Jade, right?
Yes. His recommendation was $30,000, which would be about, what we're hoping Jade doesn't exceed.
Yeah.
So what would be the stipulation though, then I guess of Jim's motion that we would not choose Jade? I just out of
Oh.
curiosity.
I guess I was assuming that if Genesis was able to get it under 30,000 for the exact same offering, we were,
Yeah.
but I mean, again, you had experience with Genesis. It's
It was a
whatever you
long-
guys want us to do, honestly. I mean, after listening to Jade, I'm now comfortable with, listening to Jim, I'm comfortable with Jade. I just thought, oh, this was almost twice as much.
It's a big dollar amount. I do think they're getting you on a few things there. I think that they just know what the average cost is, and they've got you on the high dollar per square foot. But they might be anticipating, some sort of negotiation too. I mean,
Well,
you know,
that's kind of what I was gonna recommend is like, just go back and see if you can negotiate it down,
yeah,
which
Yeah.
is kind of hard to do with a public meeting right now, but
Well,
Right.
not really, because we have permission to go with Genesis if they offer the exact same thing for less.
right.
So we spoke with the gentleman from Jade, and if I'm happy to reach out to him and say, would you make this more palatable for the commission?
Right.
And if so, then you got the job.
right.
Right.
You're the highest bid, but we like what you say you're gonna do as far as the work. If you can throw in the wagon, I don't.
Because this is more than twice as much as what we thought this was
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
cost us.
Right. So
Uh,
we have a motion and a second on the floor. I don't think we have any other discussion then, do we?
Well, Mari, you have to negotiate the deposit on this
Oh,
one.
right.
Yeah.
No, that was Magna.
that was
Magna
Magna.
Oh,
required.
okay, very good,
50%.
very good. Okay, yeah. And you'll want to make sure and mention that you will finish painting the wagon. Just kidding.
I
Actually,
will
Marty,
if it saves us $2,000. Are you kidding me?
Jade also actually has it on their invoice. The payment terms would be 50% due at the start and 50%. at
Oh, I
completion.
missed
So,
that.
yeah, it's hidden up at the top of the thing.
And also
Yeah.
Jade is just using a oil primer, not full
Not
oil
oil
paint
paint.
for their two
Yeah.
coats. We just want oil primer.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, what the oil primer will do is it'll bond to that substrate and basically create a new surface for you to paint on, is what it'll do. The water-based primer, it's fine for interior stuff or maybe around your house, but I wouldn't do it on the exterior.
So it's okay to put water-based paint over, over oil-based primer. Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Any other discussion?
What you don't want to do for future use is use water-based primer and put oil-based paint over it.
Over, yeah.
That will ruin it, but yeah.
Okay.
So I guess all those in favor say aye. Or
I,
raise your hand.
All right.
Does anybody oppose? All right. So that kind of covered, I think, all three of those bullet points, did it not?
Yes, so
Motion carries.
I'll go back and follow up with all of this stuff, and I will also let you guys know. My last question for you would be if, if like whichever one of these three we decide to start going with, just to get on their schedule, we have to give them a confirmation, but that would probably fall before the 16th, which is the next Common Council and Finance meeting to get the contract approved. There, like for instance, Genesis has a 10% penalty rate if you cancel a contract. So if I enter into contract negotiations with them prior to us being officially approved, and then Finance and Common Council says no, then we'd owe like $1,600. So my question to you guys is, if this getting on the schedule is worth $1,600 possibly, do I have permission to get the contract going and have the city, the city attorney approve it and go through all of that, and get on their schedule before Finance and Common Council approve this?
My
Kathy, do you
question.
see any
what-
reason Finance or Common Council would not approve it? Sorry, Corey.
I was
No.
just gonna say, my question is can we do that for the city?
Well, you can, but you would break your agreement and you'd have to pay the
Yeah.
fee. So,
$100. I think we're kind of at a bad time here because we're really kind of running against Mother Nature. And we're gonna get somewhere where it's like, oh, cool, then we're getting it done in the spring, and then yeah, we're gonna have to rebid that now because for whatever reason. So I don't know. I feel like it, in my opinion, it's worth the
well,
risk.
at this point, we're Finance and Common Council meets in 2 weeks, and it might take me that long to get all three of these companies with bids back and get the
Yeah.
contract going. I do have the boilerplate contract that the city uses for services. And so whomever we choose, I'll just plug everything in, send it to them, have them redline it or approve it, and then send it on to the city attorney. And even if he hasn't responded yet, we can still have it approved by Finance and Common Council. They can vote to approve it per city attorney approval. And so, we could still carry on. The thing is that if there is any chance this isn't going to be accepted by Finance and Common Council and we have to break the agreement, we would be paying, just so you know, we'd be paying, $1,700 or so.
Yeah.
But
If we
again,
have the power to do that, I would just say yes, if everyone's in agreement with that.
okay.
Mari, do you need any backup support from anyone on this call at the Common Council, just in case they question anything, or do you feel comfortable that this is going to be?
Well, if I'm able to go through the city attorney, if he signs off on it, hardly anyone ever asks a question.
Okay.
Because he's the one just making sure that the city isn't liable for anything. For us, because all of we're self-funded, the city wouldn't be on the hook for anything when you think about it, because we have our general fund. And so that's why, as long as the city attorney, approves everything, and Kathy, jump in if you disagree, but I don't think we'd have a problem having it approved.
I
I
don't
know
think
the
there's
city
a
doesn't want to
problem.
pay to renovate the building.
No,
So-
I don't think there's a problem. It's just that It doesn't look good when you cancel contracts is the only thing, but that's,
Oh,
you know,
I
I think,
agree.
yeah. So
I
that's all. I have.
I definitely wouldn't begin this if I thought that there was a chance that the
Mhm.
council wouldn't say yes. But I have to warn the commission, if that
Right.
were to ever happen, we would be liable for a fee.
Right.
Understood.
Okay.
So we're good, I believe, like I said, on all three, and then all the items for the next agenda are listed. Does anyone have anything to add? I hope not, because we already have probably about a 2-hour meeting scheduled.
So yeah, Yuri, he only has 15 minutes and I want us to keep discussion down to 10 or 15. And I plan on sending things out as far in advance as I possibly can. So if you have questions and things and you need clarification, let's try to get as much of that done actually before the meeting. And then one more addition, the city is going to make a request for V-Cycle again. And I told them I would put it on the agenda, but I also gave them a list of things that we need to know in order to consider that. And so that will be treated the same way as the cross-country presentation. If the commission decides it's worth investigating further, we can include a budget line item and then go through the whole budget process. I can always take things off of the budget, right? Like if we decide as a commission, we do not want to donate money to, for instance, cross-country or V-Cycle, then that just gets taken off of the budget. We just don't spend that money. But also if it comes down to the budget and I'm told that I have to cut the budget, those would be the first things that I would have to approach you about, because I don't want to sacrifice operational costs for V-Cycle.
Mhm.
So it all
Last time I
depends
asked
on.
was like 150 grand or something like that. It was-
Well, they have found other funding, so I think that they're only looking for 25% of it, but I have no idea what that number is. Abby's gonna. I'm trying to be like slightly impartial here. I have my own opinions about V-Cycle, but let's hear her
For
out.
sure. Yep.
And I also told her we need data from V-Cycle. Like when people use their credit cards, it gives a zip code. I need to know in communities like us, how many people from 50 miles out are using it versus residents.
Right.
And so V-Cycle should be able to have that data available. We're not asking for them to release the zip codes. We're asking them to release the distance. You know, how many of your riders are from outside 50-mile radius of communities similar to Middleton? Leisure-based, around 20,000 people, no college. You know, those are some of the qualifications I gave her. And look at it that way. And then, so again, I mean, if you guys are interested, we can add on the 16th, I can add that line item in before I meet with finance on the 19th. And we can always decide later through more research if we want to still accept it. But I can't add it in later, right? So if you guys decide in December you want to do this, we'd have to wait a whole year. But again, if I get told that my budget is too high, things like that will have to come down, I think, before operational costs. So that's another thing to think about too.
Mari, did they mention if there's planning the same kind of setup where they had what they proposed before? One at Greenway, one out at the sports fields.
She didn't mention. I asked her to, include some stuff like that. Someone was talking about putting one maybe by the library, because I guess it's very popular in other communities. But I mean, I would assume that's for residents. But I asked for like how many bikes. I think I asked her where they would be stationed, if this is a one-time gift, which is kind of how I think it would probably be considered more or less, or is it going to be something that isn't sustainable by itself and we would be asked to keep donating.
Mm-hmm.
I told her tourism does not see transportation as a tourism cost. So we need to see data. And I think we've all agreed that we don't want to fall into another trolley trap where we're spending $100,000 or more a year on something because we think it's a great idea, but it's not actually adding something to tourists or bringing people here. So we'll see what her data comes back as, right? So I asked her to submit it. Yeah, and I asked her to submit it by the Thursday before. So I'm hoping to get you some information on the budget before then, so that you have some time to look through it and ask questions. And then, but her piece will probably be the last piece added to the agenda, simply because she only has a week or so to get that together. So that is one more thing being added to the list. So yeah, it's gonna be a solid 2 hours.
Yeah, so I would review the budget ahead of time and jot any questions if you have them.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to send you guys as much stuff. And again, with the grant guidelines, if you guys have read those and have suggestions, edits, whatever, send them my way. I can even send them, the new versions out to the entire commission beforehand and, treat it as a second draft, so that we aren't spending a lot of time in the meeting actually talking about edits. We can just vote on whether or not we want to carry on with it.
Do we want to consider starting the meeting a half hour early, like this one started at 3:30? Would that be of any use to anybody?
If people
Fine with
think,
me.
if people can do that, I mean, obviously I'm free, but on the 16th, Tuesday, the 16th,
Yeah, I would like to.
okay.
I guess none of us will be going to the chamber social hour here at the beer garden that day.
Come on, guys, you're ruining all the fun.
What time does that start?
4 to 6, same exact time.
Oh, man, can we move our meeting? No.
Well, I asked it because I know Kate's not going to be able to be there. So Kevin, you're not going to be able to be there, correct?
No, I mean, I don't have to attend the social.
You can zoom in.
Yeah.
So as long
I'll bring you drinks, Kevin, from just
as long as we have 4 people, like, we can move forward. And as long as the people who can't come have a chance to, weigh in on anything you want to ask questions about, then, I mean, if you guys want to move it up to 3:30, I totally can.
I think that's fine.
Jose,
Seems like everyone's nodding.
was that yes or no?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay.
Does anybody, if I don't know if anyone has anything else or not, but we just need a motion to adjourn if there is nothing else.
I will make a
I will
motion.
entertain the motion. I'll
Everyone's
second it.
jumping at that one.
Okay, sorry. Who made the motion and who seconded?
Jim
I'll
made
I'll
the
let Jim have
motion
the
and
motion. I'll
Jose.
second.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
All right, perfect. I
Good
think we're good to
information.
go.
Thanks for all that insight, Jim. Appreciate it. Good job, Mari.
that
Thank
was
you
great.
so much, Jim. Seriously.
Bye, everybody. No problem.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.